Today, we have in possession in this committee is House Bill 31, Wyoming Tomorrow Scholarship Program. It's a joint committee bill, but the House did amend it. Do we have anybody here from the House? I don't see anybody. Frankly, the notice of meetings in the legislature not getting out well. And we're gonna have to do something about that. Is there anybody here, State Department or anybody else that knows what the House did and why and can give us a background on that? And maybe on the bill too.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Sandy Caldwell, Executive Director of the Wyoming Community College Commission. There was an amendment in the House on the third read amendment. What I can tell you, it is on page 16, and it is the second preference was added. This was an amendment by Representative Greer. And what it does is it adds a second priority to the student scholarships, that if a student has an industry that they're working for, a business that they are working for, and that business pays up to 25% of their total cost, then they receive a second preference for it. This amendment, really what it does is it allows for the funding to go further, actually, because you have businesses that are helping to carry the cost of that particular student, thereby allowing additional funds for other students to access this scholarship.
It starts on the engrossed copy on page 16. It starts, the substantive part of it starts on line 14. I think they probably had to amend something above it too to make it fit. Dr. Caldwell, your community colleges are mostly going to administer this program, are they not?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, yes, it is to be administered out of the commission. And we will do that in consultation with the university, with the Department of Workforce Services, with Wyoming Business Council, and it has other stakeholders. And we think that would be very appropriate to have an industry representative participate in that role writing with us.
Okay. Can you give us a quick run through of what you see the bill doing and how that's beneficial?
Mr. Chairman.
Or not beneficial, as the case may be.
Mr. Chairman, I certainly can do so. Would you be amenable to having Ms. Taylor join me?
More than amenable.
I am loading up my computer. I could do even a complete walkthrough if you would like. That is something I am prepared to do.
Yeah, yes, but be reasonably brief.
Mr. Chairman, I certainly can do that. I will go very quickly and run you through the bill. I know this committee, the Senate Education, is very familiar with this bill because it's a joint committee bill. What I will do is go through very, very quickly through the pages, give you a big summary of all the lines. And then I believe Ms. Taylor has an idea for some potential amendments that we had heard about. And then also Ms. Taylor has some really great information that we had heard that came up as more technical aspects. So I will just begin very quickly. Pages 2 and 3, lines 4 through 22 on page 2 through page 3, lines through 1 through 23, the entire thing. Those are definitions. What I can tell you is that these definitions are consistent and reflect the current college and university language, including what is used in Wyoming Works. That is one of the strong benefits that we see in this one. I do want to mention that I believe Ms. Taylor might have a copy of some amendments for page 3 that would integrate more strongly the current Wyoming Works to help fund that student grant and to get that off the general fund. One thing I will tell you is page 4, lines 5 through 11. This does meet the federal definition of unmet financial need. As you work through this bill in the interim session, you really strengthened up a lot of things in this particular bill. I will mention it is last dollar funding that is important to be aware of, because the word minus provides that clarification, and it does meet the federal compliance for unmet need. Page 4, line 13 through page 6, line 2. So I'm going to go through several pages right here, but I think I can give you a good summary of this. This entire section establishes the expenditure account, including criteria for the tipping funds, as well as timelines and other requirements for the state treasurer. So this is really the mechanical section of how the actual funding would work and build the endowment. Page 6, lines 3 through page 8, line 4, very quickly. This section establishes scholarship awarding from the endowment until the expenditure account is funded after approximately 5 years. So it allows some scholarships immediately while still building out the fund. If you then go to page 8, line 6 through page 10, line 15, again, I'm going through a whole section here. This is really important. And this is a section that you as a committee during the joint interim session worked very thoroughly on and really strengthened this section up as well. This section outlines student eligibility requirements, including residency of 1 year, but a combined of 3. You start at age 24 and older, and this aligns with the educational attainment plan. And I will mention that our co-chair of the Attainment Council, Dr. Dale, is here, and the other co-chair is President Seidel at the university. And the students also no longer meet Hathaway eligibility. And you'll see that in here, and you'll see that language at the end of the bill to shore that up on the Hathaway side. They have to complete the FAFSA, which is the free application for federal student aid. They have to meet Title IV citizenship requirements or resident alien. You did all of that this summer, and no outstanding institutional debt. I will say this is one of the bills, much like Wyoming Works, that allows you cannot be incarcerated. However, former felons can use this. So it really helps on that recidivism side of this. Yes, sir.
A little bit, you can't be incarcerated. I see that. But then what you said something right after that.
I certainly did, Mr. Chairman. I'll slow down a little. I've just tried to speed it up so that I can get through that. So you cannot be incarcerated. That is one of those requirements that's on here because it's to make sure that those funds are being used by individuals who are really going to be in the workforce. It does not disallow former felons, and that has been a restriction in the past. And that is something we had worked with the Department of Corrections to really help with reduction of recidivism. We would like for individuals to be at work, educated and at work, and contributing to the state's economy.
I know I had a relative in another state that took advantage of a similar program, actually the Georgia Hope Scholarship. And he had been, had some problems when he was growing up and had been incarcerated. And when he finally got his life straightened out, it was very useful to be able to acquire a marketable skill that he could really support his family with. Really helped his return to being a productive, law-abiding citizen. So I can testify from personal experiences. I think we've got it right here.
Mr. Chairman, I would agree with that for sure. This does put a funding cap of 7,200. That's to make sure, of course, that it can be used by as many people as possible to give the hand up to get them back into the workforce. Page 10. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. And committee, as you get questions, jump in here. The 7,200 funding cap. This covers tuition and fees. Does it cover other expenses?
Mr. Chairman, it absolutely can. So it can help with the unmet need because we do know many of these individuals have barriers beyond the tuition and fees. It can fill in the gap of Pell Grant.
Okay, there's a gap in with using the definition of unmet need, which is federal, is it not, and pretty uniform right across the country, right?
Mr. Chairman, you are correct. And the students cannot be overfunded. I think that's another thing for you to know.
You have this cap. Can they use it for things like living expenses?
Mr. Chairman, yes, it's a part of what is the total cost of attendance. However, they cannot exceed the total cost of attendance at the institution. So for example, if a student's total cost of attendance for a semester is $4,000 and they receive $3,200, they would only be eligible up to the balance of that, which would be $800.
And who determines the total cost of attendance?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, that is something that the institutions must provide. It is also federal compliance requirement.
Okay, so the feds have rules on it. The
Yes, sir.
institutions have to determine that,
Yes,
and the feds use it for multiple scholarship type programs. Is
Mr.
that
Chairman,
right?
that is correct. And it is consistent.
Yeah, I can really see questions on the floor on this sort of thing.
Mr. Chairman, we anticipated that, and I will tell you that we do have a list of detailed sort of technical responses to questions we heard on the House side.
Okay, that'd be useful.
Mr. Chairman, Erin Taylor has that document. She snazzed it up and really put some of those questions on. And one of the next ones is one of the questions that we received. So we have a really strong answer for you, and you as a committee discussed this at length, so we were not surprised. Page 10, line 17 through page 12, line 23. This section provides scholarship amounts per academic term, and it specifies 4 academic terms. So there is a limit on the number of times, and that was to ensure that they're really progressing and getting into the workforce. They have to maintain eligibility to include the prescribed, what is called satisfactory academic progress. SAP is what it is commonly called, is a term of art in higher ed, much like FAFSA. And what we did is we did put together a description and explanation of what that is. That is a very specific requirement. It is a federal compliance requirement that the institutions are required to have under student federal aid. So we have that.
That's found at the top of page 12.
Yeah, you have the bill in front of you. I have too many pieces of documentation in front of me.
Okay, I see the requirement on
I can pull it up really
page
quick.
12, line 1. On the engrossed, make satisfactory academic progress to a degree of certificate.
Yes,
by
sir.
Completing 2/3.
Yes, sir.
And you say that are those specific numbers out of a federal requirement, or do we set our own essentially cut score on that?
So, Mr. Chairman, how that works at the federal level is it is required for an institution to have that, and it must be within specific parameters. They have some flexibility in setting that. However, it must be within their catalog, and it must be public and published, and it can't be just randomly changed. So what you did during the interim session is made sure that the way that this is written meets that for the institutions, and also includes some exceptions on eligibility, which are things like military service and serving a mission, those types of things, which are also allowable within institutional satisfactory academic progress requirements. And that is one of the explanations Ms. Taylor has on her sheet because it did come up.
Okay, and Ms. Taylor, can you elaborate a bit on that?
So, Mr. Chairman, what the document that Dr. Caldwell is referring is, it just says Wyoming's Tomorrow supplemental talking points, and you should have that in front of you. So that's where we did pull out that that term of art, satisfactory academic progress. And what does that mean to the institution? You know, it's used for Pell Grants. There is some flexibility, like Dr. Caldwell said, but we do explain that a little bit for you in that paragraph. We can amend this document to also include more information about the conversation you just had about cost of attendance and what does that include. So we can add that to this. The purpose of this document is to provide a little bit more clarity to some of the questions that have come up over the course of the conversation during this session.
Okay, so we're depending on a definition that the institution's put together that meets federal requirements. And suppose some member upstairs say, well, it ought to be 3/4 of the attempted semester hours instead of 2/3. Does that get us in trouble?
Mr. Chairman, it does not, because the institutions can calculate that and that considers the total cost. It is prorated based on credit hours.
Okay.
We'll add that. Mr. Chairman, then if we can move on to page 13, line 2. And then this whole section through page 17, line 4. I think this is a really important one because I do think there will be a suggested amendment that's going to come up on page 16. So what this entire section does is it lays out that the Community College Commission administers the program, and we do that similarly for other ones. For example, Wyoming Works, the Wyoming Investment in Nursing, the Veterans Tuition Waiver. So we do that regularly, and this is something we are accustomed to. It says that the rules will be created by the Community College Commission, but we will do that in consultation. It specifies the university, Department of Workforce Services. We have Director Cooley here. The Wyoming Business Council, we do have CEO Josh Durrell, should be on Zoom with us today, and other stakeholders. And we, in fact, did that process whenever we were putting together the Wyoming work rules. So we feel very comfortable with that. There might be some mention that I wanted to say here. The other stakeholders can include industry representatives, community-based organizations like economic development boards, for example. And this is a section where I think might be helpful to add more specificity around industry representatives. And I think Ms. Taylor has some language potentially for you to consider. It includes first preference. I will mention that for students actively participating. And then a separate preference was added as the third read amendment from Representative Greer. And that is the 25 paying of scholarships of 25% or more. That is on page 16 that you will find that. Additional preferences are added that may be given for length of Wyoming residency and those who do not hold a degree yet. So that we are really making sure that individuals who have not even received an associate degree have preference to get that associate degree, but it does not prohibit an associate degree who did not access the scholarship, accessing that scholarship to get their bachelor's degree, because we know that's an important part of the attainment work. Page 17, line 6 through page 18, line 15. This is the reporting requirements. And that's important. We also regularly produce reports, things like on the attainment, Wyoming Works, that sort of thing, and we're happy to do so. And then it also limits scholarships per available funds on a first come, first served basis. While that is building the endowment, it does specify how much can be dispersed so that we can get some students in the pipeline while still building that endowment account. And then if we have to make sure we're accounting for encumbrances of students that are already in the process, so that we know what is going to be needed for and what is then available. So we are not permitted to over scholarship with allowable funds, which is reasonable. We have that with other programs. And then on page 18, line 17 through page 19, line 7. This is the legislative oversight, and it's always subject to appropriation and reserves the right to modify or terminate the program. That is on almost all of our programs that we have legislative oversight.
Okay, where's the specific requirement?
That is on page 18, or the reporting. Let me pull up that actual bill. That's what I should have had up. I mean, clearly I read through it all yesterday because I'm going through the walkthrough.
Committee, this is one maybe we need to think about just a little. We put together and successfully put together an endowment. That's a constitutionally protected thing because of the way we wrote that constitutional amendment that was designed to protect the Hathaway Scholarship Fund from being raided. And that is one of the things that keeps this to the formal education system, getting that protection. What do we do with the endowment if the legislature abolishes the program? And now the legislature might well abolish it and recreate it slightly different format and whatnot. But is there an interplay there? And is this part of the bill written right? Just something I think we need to think about. Okay, proceed. Senator Salazar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I apologize, I missed it. But on page 12, line 15, again, we were talking about the waivers for military service. I just wanted to publicly say that I'm very glad that's in there because we could very easily see increased deployments in the coming years. And so for our veterans and for those who are either in the Reserve or National Guard, this could be very important. So that's good that
Mr. Chairman.
I'm glad we see that in there. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, then moving on to page 18, line 17. Oh, I'm sorry, I've already done that one. It's the next one, page 19, line 9 through page 21, line 22. This is the specification of the actual endowment. Mr. Chairman, you were just referencing this per the Wyoming Constitution. That is Article 15, Section 20 of the Constitution. It is referenced in this bill, and you made sure of that during the interim session. And it has the earning up to 50 million, which then moves into the expenditure account. So it goes back to the expenditure account that was created earlier in the bill. It does add, Mr. Chairman, Wyoming's Tomorrow to the list of the permanent funds and outlines permissible investments. And that is consistent with Wyoming statute, Title 9, Section 4, 716, and that is also referenced in the bill. So it is conforming to the functions that you already have in place in alignment with the Constitution. Then page 22, lines 1 through 23, that's that entire page, separates out Wyoming's Tomorrow from the Hathaway Scholarship and allows participation in only one of the programs at a time. And that is by design. And page 23 only has one part, and that is the effective date of July 1 of this year.
Okay, thank you very much. Committee questions? Erin, do you want to add anything?
Mr. Chairman, I'd love to do that. Thank you. Good morning. My name is Erin Taylor. I'm the Executive Director of the Wyoming Association of Community College Trustees. And Mr. Chairman, I do have some handouts that you have before you. So I just wanted to kind of quickly walk you through all three of those. The first one that I'll reference does have the logo on top for WACD. And these are just kind of the basic talking points that you've heard. You know, what does the bill do? It's not a walkthrough like you just heard from Dr. Caldwell, but it gives you some of the data on those working adults that we don't have opportunity for yet in our state. and why that's important. And so I just wanted to give you that might help with some of your conversations on the floor, I thought. One thing that I wanted to point out on the second page are the industry supporters that are behind this bill, and many of them are behind me today and probably would like to express their support for the bill. You'll see that we cover so many different industries, from our electric co-ops to the trucking association, the contractors, the nurses, the mining association, petroleum association. So really a broad spectrum of our industry workforce. And Mr. Chairman, while I have the microphone, if I may speak for Cindy Delancey, who is the president of the Wyoming Business Alliance. She is ill and not able to attend even via Zoom. And so she wanted me to express her support and her organization's support for the bill. I appreciate that privilege. The second document is one that I already referenced, and that has just supplemental talking points referring to things like the satisfactory academic progress. We'll add some more on there about the cost of attendance and how these are really terms of art, but used in the industry right now, and how they fit in with other programs that are regularly used in that space. We also talk about how this incorporates with the Wyoming Works program right now, and how this can be really a tool to permanently fund those sorts of programs, which are highly specialized and their credit. But we also want to talk about how non-credit programs can fit into this. And that's the amendment then. That's the third document that I am suggesting to you, is to tie in that Wyoming Works non-credit programs. And so there's 5 pages, or excuse me, five suggestions of wording changes, but it all kind of goes to the same thing. The first 4 are just tying in non-credit industry recognized credentials that meet the Wyoming Works eligibility.
You've lost me in the pile of paper. Where is this?
Okay, it's this simple document, Mr. Chairman, that says suggested amendments to House Bill 31. It was just handed out this morning, so I think you should have that.
There is. Looks like that. There it is. Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, all of the suggestions that refer to page 3, the first 4 really are just incorporating that non-credit component of those industry recognized credentials that meet Wyoming Works eligibility. It's just a little bit of wordsmithing to make sure it fits correctly into the bill. The very last suggestion is on page 16, line 8, that you heard from Dr. Caldwell might be worthy of including. And this really came from the conversations in the House on third reading from Representative Greer, including that industry component that really, really resonated, I'll tell you, with House members. Why wouldn't we have that industry component in this? And that, I think, actually brought some more support to the bill. So adding stakeholder, including but not limited to industry representatives in that rulemaking process.
We'll ask you to give us details on this when we work the amendment in a few minutes. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only other thing that I would stress is that, the language that is included in Wyoming Works, really emphasizing the high demand and regional economic needs, that language is included in this bill. And so that the preference would be given to those areas of the state where we really need that workforce. And then I think with that, Mr. Chairman, I am just happy to answer any questions. I know there's folks behind who really want to support, but I think can add to the robust conversation and answer questions that you might anticipate hearing on the floor with this. So other than that, I'm happy to provide support for you. I'll update some documents so that you've got what you need on the floor.
Let me ask a question that I expect to get from the Appropriations Committee. They have a habit of saying, gee, we've already got a program in this area, it covers it, you don't need another one. And they will use Wyoming Works as a excuse not to do this because it costs money. How do you respond to that one?
Mr. Chairman, and there's a lot of other folks that I know want to talk about how it all fits together. And I think I'd encourage you to hear from them too. But I would say this is meeting an unmet need. You know, Wyoming Works only covers a certain portion of the population. This can cover all of those working adults who currently don't have any sort of option to get them to that next level.
Quickly, what is the group then that Wyoming Works covers? And who is it?
Mr. Chairman, I'd love to have Dr. Caldwell answer that because she can give you the details.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and the Wyoming Works, it has both credit and non-credit, but they must be recognized industry credentials in the CTE space. So what it misses, for example, would be some of the STEM majors. I would say if you're going into engineering, there is not a funding for you as an adult. If you're going into engineering tech that is in an applied science at one of the colleges, then you are. So it really misses that vital component of the adults that are looking at not the narrow definition of CTE, but a broader definition that is going to impact the state's economy. And Mr. Chairman, I might add one thing to what Ms. Taylor just mentioned about Wyoming Works. Wyoming Works is funded on the general fund. And when we had to cut programs, it was the first thing that was cut. Governor Gordon is the one that restored that. But what this does is it provides a funding mechanism outside of the general fund, and it would take the Wyoming Works off the general fund for the student grants.
Wait a minute, I didn't understand that last thing.
Mr. Chairman, currently the Wyoming Works student grants are a general fund appropriation, and they are subject to funding. But should this be moved into an endowment, then it will not be subject to the general fund appropriation.
So Wyoming Works has a component, right?
Mr. Chairman, yes, the Wyoming Works is comprised of two components, the majority of that being student grants, a smaller component of that being to programmatic funding for the colleges.
And this by having student grants too gives some protection in case that goes away due to a budget cut.
Mr. Chairman, yes.
Okay. Committee? Who else wants to testify? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Kim Dale, and I'm the president at Western Wyoming Community College. And I'm here to speak in favor of Wyoming's tomorrow. However, I would like to respectfully request we reconsider naming this to Wyoming's today, because Wyoming is facing a workforce talent crisis. We know folks are leaving our great state. So how can we keep them here and keep them gainfully employed? I'd like to first put on my employer hat as someone who's running a college and say, I'm dismayed to share with you that in the past 2 weeks, 4 of our full-time employees at Western resigned. And 3 out of 4 of these folks are moving out of state. And they're moving out of state for various reasons, but they are moving to high wage, high skill, high demand positions. So we have a challenge as an employer in attracting and retaining this talent. And Wyoming's today could help. Now I'll put on my community college leadership hat and talk about how in Southwest Wyoming, we are poised to boom. We are looking at the trona industry that is expanding. We know that the Exxon plant in LaBarge just announced an expansion effort. We know that something big is happening in Kemmer called the Natrium facility. And not only will that generate jobs for years, but it will also attract suppliers to our area. Evanston has 2 new manufacturers coming in. And just last week, I learned that a manufacturer is coming to Southwest Wyoming in 2 weeks to consider moving their plant. And they're looking to do a site visit. And their number one question is, do you have a trained workforce? So this is why this bill is so important. If we don't retain and train our adult Wyomingites, we can't grow, we can't diversify, we can't keep our talent in our great state. So, Mr. Chairman and committee members, Wyoming's tomorrow can help today. Thank you. Do you have any questions for me?
I think you have given us, we won't retitle this, I don't think, but I think you've given us a good lead in to explain it to the Senate.
Thank you, sir.
Me? Okay, thank you very much. Very useful. Yes, ma'am, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Robin Cooley, and I'm the Director of Wyoming Workforce Services. Thank you for having me here today. And I'm here to speak in favor of the bill. If I look at it from a global view, really, and it's kind of the first opportunity that I've had to see a bill that really works with post-secondary education, the workforce, and business and industry together, drafting rules to make this work so that it's going to fit all the parts and pieces together to develop this workforce. We have an incredible gap or demographic of workforce in this state that have a little bit of post-secondary, a little bit of a certification, but for whatever reason, weren't able to continue and to finish that. That's an incredible workforce that we need right now. And we've all heard that dire need that we've got in the state. And I really like the idea of the name change to Wyoming's Today, because it's today that we need this workforce. But Chairman Scott, I would really like to speak to your comments around the questions that you may get, that there are already programs out there that really address these issues. The way that I look at this program, it's a continuum of effort that works from the Wyoming's Tomorrow Scholarship, working with our workforce centers around the state that are working with federal funds, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act funds, that also help a segment of these individuals. But that segment they work with can only be assisted with a certain income level. So if they have a certain, and a lot of these individuals are working, so they're not going to meet that income level. So then where we go from there would be to the Wyoming Scholarship, would help them step forward and get into some of these training programs through our community colleges and elsewhere. But then also you've got a layer on top of that. You've got our Workforce Development Training Fund grant program that can help them get through that program with apprenticeships or internships or training programs, other training programs that will then take them one step further down that road to get into those jobs that they're really looking for and that they want to take part in. So I see this as just a continuum of assistance to get these individuals into the jobs and into the industries that we know we need assistance with workforce. So I would speak in favor of it. I see it as an opportunity for all of these entities to work together to make this a workforce that's going to stay in Wyoming. It's just like was previous indicated. This is a group of people, this demographic that they've decided to make Wyoming their home. They're going to stay here. They're working here. We need to give them the opportunity to upskill and to get into some of the jobs that we know are here and that are coming into the state of Wyoming, and give them that opportunity to get into those higher paying, better wage jobs. And I'm happy to stand for any questions.
Minnie? Let me ask you one then. This does help fill some of the voids that there are in our ability to train workforce service as of various eligibility requirements and other limitations of the program. Is it also true that when you add everything we've got up together, it isn't enough to meet the need either from the perspective of the students or the perspective from the employers?
Mr. Chairman, I think if the question are all these parts and pieces together enough?
Yeah.
That remains to be seen. But I really want to take the opportunity to see that and see that through to see if it is enough. I do think we've got a lot of opportunity out there. And I certainly would hope that this continuum would be enough.
This may not be by itself, but what I'm asking is, under the current circumstance, absent this program, is there just not enough available for all the needs?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, it is my opinion that no, there is not enough. I look at what we have individuals coming in with for WIOA funds, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act funds. There are a limited number of individuals, dislocated workers, for instance, that we can assist with those funds because of the income qualifications. They're working, so they're not going to meet those income qualifications a lot of the time. But they're also not able to get into and pay for some of these educational programs that they need to upskill, because they do have to continue working. So a lot of what we want to do is provide not only the scholarships here, but also some other services that we think we can wrap around them to help them, whether it's childcare assistance, whether it's some assistance, limited assistance for rental circumstances. I'd like you to think back to the dislocated worker grants that we provided to some of the coal miners when the coal mine shut down overnight in Gillette. Those are the types of programs that we want to provide. We want to be able to provide it to a greater number of individuals. And as you'll recall those discussions with that, there were a limited number of assistance programs that we could help them with because of income limitations.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director, I wanted to hear your thoughts about success, potential, and opportunity. And we have a handout, which I think is valuable, of examples that are similar to Wyoming's Tomorrow adult grants, which provides for the Tennessee Reconnect adult grant, LCCC Rediscover program, and the current Western Wyoming Community College Bogan Opportunity Adult Scholarship. Plus, we've seen previous efforts through the legislature. How effective have our previous programs been, and what do you see Wyoming's Tomorrow perhaps bringing in addition to that, or potential ways to build upon those past successes?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Rothfuss, excellent question. I don't know that I can give you data on how successful those other programs have been. I just don't know that in terms of the college success. What I would tell you from the numbers that I'm seeing of individuals in this demographic that have not been able to finish and not been able to get that certification or that degree, it seems to me like those have not been as successful as they would have hoped to have been. This is different in my view, because it does make all of these parts and pieces fit together. It makes us work together. We're mentioned in the bill. We've got to be in that rulemaking process, as well as industry and business. and the post-secondary. I don't recall seeing that in the past. And I think that's what makes this potentially different and probably more successful in my view.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Who else? Who else? Declever.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Tony Declever, and I represent the Wyoming Nurses Association, and we are in support of this bill. Several years ago, the Wyoming legislature developed a program called WIN, Wyoming Investment in Nursing. And basically what this provided was scholarships for students wanting to go into the field of nursing, and it also paid for faculty in order to teach nurses. With the budget cuts just recently, the scholarship side of that program was completely cut. So though there is money there for the faculty to continue to teach, there is no scholarship money for students. Our association is divided into 5 regions, and the central region, where Senator Salazar comes from, they offered, their region offered scholarships to students. They had 1 scholarship available and 76 applications because there's just nothing out there. I recently had a very good friend. She came to me and she said, Tony, you're going to think I'm crazy, but I want to go to nursing school. And I'm like, what's crazy about that? And she goes, I'm 51 years old. Where's my head? And I'm like, good for you. Go for it. So she said, do you know if there's any financial assistance available for someone who is 51? And I said, I don't think so, not in our state. And there could be, but I was not aware of any. And something like this, I could say to her, yes, you should apply for the Wyoming's Tomorrow Scholarship Program, because they might. I know that it's need, but there's always an opportunity that maybe that could be helpful. So we need nurses. I know that we need welders and we need electricians and we need industry people, but we really need a lot of nurses. And so a program like this would be very beneficial. I stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, yeah, so this would directly affect WIN's ability for students to engage in that program, correct?
Senator Scott, Senator Salazar, that's my understanding. Yes. Currently, students that go into nursing cannot apply for WIN funds because there isn't any.
Well, Mr. Chairman, so I get, what am I trying to get to? So this scholarship can be applied to someone who wants to go into WIN, correct?
Senator Scott, Senator Salazar, it would be someone who would want to go into the field of nursing. So WIN is a program that was developed by the legislature that stands for the Wyoming Investment in Nursing.
Right.
And it initially had 2 components. One was to pay for nursing faculty to teach nursing to students, and the other was scholarships for students. There is no more scholarship money. Does that help? All right, thank you.
Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Dan Benford with the Contractors Association. I was recently hired as Director of Workforce Development for the contractors. They saw fit to have a position created for the members that is solely designed to help with their workforce needs. The contractors are in support of this bill. We believe this will be a useful tool for us as we rebuild and get ready for the construction that's coming down in Wyoming. Some of it's already here, and we need the workforce. That's all I have to say. Stand for questions.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Anybody else? Taylor.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, good morning. Sean Taylor with the Wyoming Rural Electric Association. We are also in support of this bill. We anticipate a number of line crews retiring in the next probably 5 to 6 years. And anything that you all can do that we can support and attract and retain those line crews, line workers, we would be in support of. We just had our annual meeting here in town the past 2 days, and Dr. Dale came from Western Wyoming College and talked about the line worker school program that they're getting in place and probably launching in the fall. And that was very exciting to hear. And we can see the scenario where if we have the Wyoming's Tomorrow in place, we have the school over at Western in place right now, we give scholarships to students to go out of state. And I think these two would work very well together, and in keeping folks in Wyoming. And like I said, we anticipate a number of retirements in this profession coming down the pike here in the next several years. And anything you all could do to help us keep those folks.
Let me ask you to elaborate just a little bit, because this will be a good example to explain the Senate, I think. What kind of training does somebody, academic training that this could help with? Does somebody need to be online?
What kind of training, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
There's critical math. There's electrical, a component of electrical engineering, safety. Dr. Dale could probably tell you better than I could, because she has the whole program and curriculum already laid out. I don't want to put her on the spot, but maybe so. She could probably answer that better than I could.
Mr. Chairman. From your office.
Mr. Chairman, I'd rather hear Sean struggle for a while longer. I will skip
Didn't know
ahead.
you had a
All right, never mind. Never mind. Fine.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Dr. Dale.
Thank you. We are in the process of developing both a one-year certificate and a two-year degree to train the linemen and women, and then they will go into apprenticeship program. What really helped and accelerated this process is the fact that Western already has an electrical and instrumentation program, which has typically trained, quote, electricians to go out and work in the mines. And now that will be the basis for the training for the lineman program. And then there will obviously be the element of climbing the pole and fixing the lines. And so we actually are going to be having some poles in place by the end of April. So we are rocking and rolling on this program.
You're expecting to take your first students in this April?
In the fall, the registration process will open in early April. We are hoping to have 2 full-time faculty, and that will train 30 students, 15 per cohort.
And Sean, your testimony is now you're sending people out of state to train.
Mr. Chairman, that's correct.
How many of them don't come back?
I don't have that number off the top of my head, but we make it a requirement of our scholarship too, when they finish the school out of state, that they at least notify us that they're done, and we send that out to all of our co-ops. It'd be tough to give you a solid number, Mr. Chairman. I don't think very many though.
Committee, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Anybody else?
Chairman Scott, you do have 2 individuals online, one
Okay.
of them with both of them with their hand up.
Let's admit one first and then the next.
Josh had his hand up first. He is with Laramie, Wyoming Business Council. I'll admit him.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Josh Durrell. I'm the CEO of the Wyoming Business Council. And we've been working closely with this group.
Josh, we can't hear you.
Are you able to hear me now?
No, There's still something wrong.
How about now, sir? Are you able to hear me now? Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Do we have any way of communicating with him? He needs to unmute.
I am not on mute right now. It sounds like it can be heard online, just perhaps not in the room.
The other speaker,
Yeah, let's try the other one.
that will give us a couple.
How about now? I wish I knew a long poem or a song or something I could sing.
He's not muted. You can tell that. So there's something else going on.
Something else wrong.
Both of the panelists are online now. I know we're not hearing them.
How about now? Are you able to hear me now? Still not able to hear. Looks like online they can hear, but in the room, perhaps not.
We can hear you now, Josh.
Oh,
Just as of 1 second ago.
Yeah.
well, great. I did get a couple requests via chat to sing Ragtime Cowboy Joe. I will not do that for the sake of the committee as well as all the others. Mr. Chairman and committee members, thank you for figuring out the audio and allowing me to speak on this topic. I think it's a really critical topic. My name is Josh Durrell. I'm the CEO of the Wyoming Business Council. And over the last couple of years, for sure, we have been working very closely with the other agencies that have been represented today to come up with what I think is a team approach to these. And as I believe Director Cooley mentioned, a continuum of how to handle the challenge that we face. I want to highlight just a few brief facts about some of the other programs that have been talked about, and then provide maybe a general overview of how this impacts economic development, which is something that is really important to all of us. And I'll not frame it as economic development, which tends to be, I think, a little bit esoteric, but I want you to think about what I would call community resilience, because ultimately that's what we're looking to develop with this program, as well as economic development as a whole, is community resilience, the ability to weather storms, the ability to continue to grow in the face of challenges. And so this helps do that a lot. Our strategy of building that resilience in communities is supported by a program like this. I want to just highlight a number of things. So if we look at the Tennessee Reconnect program, I want to talk about how that relates to Wyoming. And so one of the things that was mentioned in that is that reconnectors really, for the most part and overwhelmingly, indicate that finances are their biggest challenge in pursuing a degree or credential. And I think if you look at where not only do the survey results match up with the education and workforce survey, but I think if you look at the tide that is hitting some of our communities, this is going to be more and more of a problem when you think about transitioning workers. Then if we jump down to the Laramie County Community College Rediscover program, a couple things to note are that the folks that are in those Rediscover programs are more likely to earn a credential during that period than non-Rediscover students, 20% more in fact. And so I think that that's really a key indicator of, and I think this is something that we can see many times at the secondary education level. Those folks who maybe are a little bit non-traditional tend to be a lot more focused and really know why they're doing it and tend to complete and be much more persistent. I also wanted to point out that the most common credentials earned by Rediscover students are in healthcare, business, and IT programs. And so I think one of the things that is really key to me, and I'll talk about this more in a minute, is how closely that aligns with the state's economic development strategy. Those are the types of jobs that we want to encourage. Those are the types of jobs that make a difference in our communities. And those are the types of jobs that are the companies that are either looking to relocate to Wyoming or are expanding in Wyoming need for sure. And then finally, just a couple points to bring up on the Western Wyoming Community College Bogan opportunity adult scholarship. Take a look at that. There were 101 qualified applicants, but only 13 students were awarded. So I think the need is demonstrated a lot here, and that's really important. And then, of course, the last bullet that you'll see talks also about the types of jobs and the types of programs that are needed. Again, this meshes closely not only with the economic development strategy, but also with what we're seeing in terms of businesses that are looking to relocate or expand in Wyoming. And that really takes me to my general comment about programs like this. When we talk with businesses that are already in Wyoming and looking to stay relevant, looking to expand, looking to take on new opportunities, workforce development is a key component of that. I happen to have come from the private sector where the businesses that we work with had some assistance and had some programs to encourage their employees to continue to grow in their education and continue to make a difference for those companies. And I can tell you that makes a difference. Now, having a much more widespread or more opportunities for that is obviously really critical. And anything we can do to help those companies that already do it make a difference is important in that expansion. When companies are here in Wyoming, we want to keep them here. We want to keep them growing. We want them to really kind of increase their footprint to take advantage of the opportunities that are coming our way. And I think members that have talked already have spoken a lot about the excitement and the things that are coming our way. But there's also a lot of, well, that's great, but gosh, we've got to get prepared. And this is one way to do that. The other element I want to talk a little bit about is in that whole idea of business recruiting and what education and an educated workforce and a ready workforce means to those companies that are coming in. I believe Dr. Dale mentioned a manufacturing company that's looking at Western Wyoming. And that is the first question, not just of that one manufacturing company in Western Wyoming, but of all the companies that come to Wyoming, is the skill level and the availability of workforce. And we want to be able to encourage this type of development of our folks in Wyoming. And I think that really ties in nicely with the recruiting that's going on, as well as the growth in our existing businesses. So this does fill a gap. It is something that is asked about, and the easier that we can make it, and the more we can show support of the state for programs like these, it really does make a difference. And sometimes it's those little things in recruiting that make a difference. It's those little things that keep a company around and keep the best people around. So I think, from an economic development or community resilience perspective, this is an incredibly important program. And I really appreciate the work that's been done, as well as your consideration and the questions that you've had up to this point. So thank you very much for listening. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Seeing none, thank you very much, sir. Please admit the other individual that's online.
She is offline now. She
Okay.
is no longer connected to the Zoom.
Okay, so we've lost her. We covered everybody in the audience. Did we not want to speak? One more.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Pat Joyce. I'm the Assistant Director of the Wyoming Mining Association. We would like to associate ourselves with the bill today. You've seen we are listed as a supporter of the bill. We have a variety of employees that we require different types of training, as you can well imagine. I always say when you walk onto a mine that it's like walking into a small town or a small city, because we have everything from the safety people, the people that pick up the trash, the people that run the trucks, the people that keep them safe, our engineers, labs, and that. So when a person does find themselves at a later stage in life and they need some additional training, and many of us have had to do, we would like to see this opportunity available to them. So, and if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer.
Any questions? Okay, none, thank you. Anybody else? Anybody else? Okay, I would like, Aaron, was that you that had that draft amendment? Can you come forward and lead us through that? We're at the point where we'll take that up. And I'm going to assume there's going to be a motion on the bill, so.
Mr. Chairman, yes, referring back to this simple page with 5 lines. Again, Aaron Taylor, Director of the Wyoming Association of Community College Trustees, to include the non-credit industry recognized credentials that meet Wyoming Works. That includes the first 4 lines on page 3. So starting on line 2 on page 3, after the words eligible institution, this is where you would insert including non-credit industry recognized credentials that meet the Wyoming Works eligibility per Wyoming Statute 21-18-403. Following that, Mr. Chairman, on page 3, line 23, before the word credit, you would just insert.
Okay. Let me stop you right there and explain why you want us to do this very first one. What is it?
Mr. Chairman, referring back to the conversation when I was up here with Dr. Caldwell, currently this bill would not include the non-credit programs that currently are included in the Wyoming Works. And those, oftentimes those non-credit programs are those high demand, high need areas across the state that are meeting those immediate workforce needs. And so that is trying to tie in that component to make sure that this could be utilized for both credit and non-credit.
Okay.
And so just the next 3 are just to make sure it reads correctly. Page 3, line 23, before the word credit, just insert the word A. Page 3, line 23, after the word credit, insert or eligible Wyoming Works non-credit. And then on page 3, line 23, delete the words toward A. So I think combined that should clean that up, Mr. Chairman, so that it should read correctly to include those non-credit programs.
3 line 23. After credit, insert non-credit. So that bottom one would read a credit or eligible Wyoming's Works non-credit degree or certificate. Okay.
Correct.
Committee, everybody understand that one? Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of that amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? That one carried. Okay, page 16.
Page 16, Mr. Chairman, line 8, after the word stakeholder, you would add the words including but not limited to industry representatives. And this ties to that rulemaking process to make sure that we do include industry in that, and tying back to the conversation on the 3rd reading in the House, as we explained earlier.
Okay. Committee, do you understand what that one's doing? Okay. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That carried. Okay. Committee, any other amendments before we get to the issue of funding? Okay. Let me ask a question. Does anybody know? The House passed a budget amendment that would fund this program, but the Senate did not. Does anybody know how much money is in the House? What the House passed? Aaron.
Mr. Chairman, it's, as I understand what passed in the House, it is diverting those dollars that would have been in the budget reserve account flowing into the legislative stabilization reserve account, the LSRA, up to $50 million.
So they took basically 50 million that was going to go to the LSRA. And I funded it that way. Committee, what I'm going to suggest, and I'd like to hear what you all think, is that we send it to the floor with a 50 million proposal, trying to back up what the House did in the budget, and see if that will help persuade the Appropriations Committee to agree to what's in the budget. The 50 million is the minimum we set in terms of getting the program going. And that was set to make sure we had enough to justify the administrative costs of doing the program. Okay. So what are your thoughts on that?
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I think it's a more appropriate path to have it in the legislation rather than just relying on the budget. I think that gives a clean opportunity for debate and contemplating the number. I do think that's what's contemplated. We have in section 3 that we basically need that minimum, as you noted. I think it's appropriate for us to, if we're going to pass out the program, this is the time when we should fund it, at least provide the preliminary funding for it. So I don't see how we can support a program like this without also contemplating how to provide the funding for it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When we worked on this bill, we had the placeholder, a small placeholder, so we could debate the merits of the scholarship. And I still think that that was the right course that we took. So that is my concern, putting that dollar amount in here as we'll start debating the money versus how it's structured. However, as we worked on the budget, I do recall that was a suggestion by one of the appropriators was you should just fund it outright. So trust our appropriators, right? I think that's a smart move.
Okay. I will then propose that we amend the end of the bill, page 22, after line 23, insert a section 4 and appropriate $50 million to the endowment for this from the budget, the legislative stabilization reserve account. Second. Okay. Moved, seconded. We can get the attorneys to get the language exactly right on this. This is pretty standard. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 1 no. 4 ayes, 1 no. Okay, that carried. Any further amendments? Any further discussion? Senator Salazar.
So, Mr. Chairman, I just want to explain my vote. I'm going to be an aye on this bill. $50 million is a lot, but in my community of Riverton and CWC Community College there, this is really important to to my folks back in Fremont. And so I'll be supporting this bill. Thank you.
Your office.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One thing that I think we all need to remember is that, and this is the beauty of the way that we've structured things like the Hathaway and our other programs, is it's not the same as just spending. It's really investing. And Mr. Chairman, the investment here is really in the education and workforce of the state and providing an opportunity for ongoing funding that will continue to support that training. So there's so many wins here. And again, it's establishing a program that hopefully, like the Hathaway, people decades from now will continue to be benefiting from and valuing. And so I just see this as a really good and necessary component of our education structure for the state of Wyoming. Good bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess it's my turn to throw cold water on all this, but somebody's got to be the bad guy, I guess. I like this idea. I think we have a workforce issue, but I do think this is best suited for the private sector. I think if we could get a 501c3 charitable organization put together with all 16 of these industry partners putting money into it, getting matching donations from our wonderful philanthropists throughout the state, they could get this thing up and running. Private donations, it'd be a charitable donation to create this scholarship fund that is needed. But I think the issues are the barriers I see, and I hear from my constituents, are the high cost of tuition. That's what keeps them from going back to school. And I'm afraid that this program would just make that worse. I think throwing more money at the community colleges, they're just going to keep ratcheting up their tuition like they have been. And I think it's just going to be constantly chasing itself. And I think it's going to exacerbate that problem. The other thing I hear from constituents are they may have had college 20 years ago and none of their credits transfer. So they have to start all over again. And it's just completely cost prohibitive. So this doesn't address that issue. And those are two big issues that need to be addressed to get people to go back to school and get the training they need. So I think with that being said, I'm going to be a no on this, but I would really like to encourage this to be done in the private sector through a charitable organization, and I think it can work. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just would remind my colleague, he doesn't have to be the bad guy. You can be a good guy too, if you want. And no, but in all seriousness, I do think that, to Senator Rothfuss's point, this is an investment. When I think of a $1.5 billion budget that we have on K through 12, 50 million is a lot of money, but it's like 3% of that budget. I love this notion of taking that and creating something that might have lasting impact for our adult learners. And, I think this issue is important for me because I was the first in my family to go to college. I think of my nephew who, he was not college bound. He was not ready for school after he graduated high school. And now he's finding himself in his mid-30s. He's a father now, and he doesn't live in Wyoming anymore. But he's had to, go through a lot of hoops to try and re-educate himself, get some kind of certificate so he can have more meaningful employment. And so when I think about the impact that those are the people who are in the forefront of my mind when I think about who this bill could help, Mr. Chairman. And it's not just about benefiting those individuals. I think our communities will benefit overall by having a more educated and more skilled workforce. So I do think this is a very, very important bill, and thanks the committee members and the additional industry reps for being here today to talk to us. I do support this bill very strongly.
Let me say two things. One, I thank Senator Beitman for raising the issue of courses from college taken years ago not transferring, and urge the Community College Commission and presidents of the colleges to see what can be done about this. I have seen that problem in slightly different settings. The standards were different in those days, and dealing with some of the older students particularly, that may be a problem that can be resolved. So I think that's a useful point to raise. With regard to the fundamental question of should it be a public responsibility or private, it seems to me this is in the area where you have both entities with responsibilities. And there are quite a number of private training programs, union apprenticeship programs. There's quite a variety of things out there. But they aren't fully meeting the need. And we as the state have an obligation to our students to help them get the kind of education. And as a practical matter of business looking to come in, their question is, what workforce do you have available? Not, if I kick in some money, can I get some more eventually? They want, what do we got right now and what can we get right now? And that's a different thing. It's not structured such that you can expect the private sector to meet all those needs. So I think this is part of the balance, public and private. With that, any further discussion, further amendments? Call the roll, please.
On House Bill 31 engrossed, Senator Beitman. No. Senator Ellis.
Aye.
Senator Rothfuss.
Aye.
Senator Salazar. And Chairman Scott.
Aye.
On House Bill 31, 1 no, 4 ayes, do pass amended.
Okay, that carried. We're gonna have to think who's gonna carry this on the floor. You worked it a lot in the interim, but you got hung up in the House Judiciary today. So question is, who wants to get, do you want to, or?
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to explain the work that's gone into this, and I did follow some of the changes made on the House side, and I think what a great process. I think they made some really great improvements. I'm happy to walk through the bill, but I suspect for those committee members that support the bill, it'll be a team effort, so I think we'll all have an opportunity to chime in.
Okay. You're welcome to say your opinion.